Okay, welcome to this Open Security Summit session in March 2022. We're going to talk about the business case for security champions, and that was a topic that I actually was talking to Olu, which I still hope he's going to join. But it was a conversation I was having with him, and he was actually asking me about some advice on security champions. And one of the questions that he was asking was about the business case for security champions. And one of the things I kind of realized was in my head, the business case for security champions it's a no-brainer. There's multiple ways to do it, but security champions is probably the single most important thing that you can do in your company, because it's a great way to scale, and it's a great way to take your security activities to the next level. And it's an amazing way to find resources that can work for you, that can be involved in your teams, and can really allow you to in fact, on the CISO panel that I was just talking about, we were basically making reference that one of the great advantages of fundamentally the security teams and building security champions is that you end up having this horizontal team across the company. And security has an interesting property that we are one of the few teams that actually can talk to everybody, and we have access to every part of the company, and we should be leveraging that. And security champions is a great way to map that. So feel free to start adding questions. Feel free to share your views. I got a couple of slides actually I can talk through, so let me just go through them. This was created in 2017. Whoa, right? My thinking evolved a little bit from it, and I actually want to talk about also the concept of security ambassadors, but also the next evolution of security champions, which I think is important. So this is probably more relevant if you don't really have a security champions program and you want to kickstart one. So I can start for it. But just again, answering, the business case for security champions is massive. And if you need to make one, there's actually a lot of good examples of teams who have been very successful about it. It's actually a project I would like us to do here at the Open Security Summit, to actually collate and maybe in an anonymized way talk about it and share some stats. But we definitely come a long way in the last 5 years, when it was still very a nascent idea. So the current thing about what I'm just going to quickly go through here is just talk about security champions. And in this particular case, I actually, when I wrote this deck, it was actually for developers who are considering becoming security champions. So this was a deck that I actually created when I presented to a bigger development team. I was basically saying, hey, being a security champion is a great opportunity for you. It's a great business, almost development and evolution in your career. And it's something that you can get a lot of value from it. So this is already written a little bit from the idea of, hey, you should become a security champion, which is something that we should be making the business case for developers. So one of the things here is that the security champions are a key element for the AppSec team, and one of the things they do, and I kind of mentioned just before, was that they create this cross-cutting, cross-functional team, in particular case focus on application security. But I would actually argue that you need security champions on every single department of the business, and even finance or HR or SRE or sales or product or engineering or manufacturing or application security or development or whatever. You need to have somebody that is accountable for security, and that's your security champion. Is that person that you can talk to, you can reach out, and you can actually be have a dialogue with, and can actually do a number of tasks. So fundamentally, a security champion is an active member of a team that help to make decisions about, for example, when to engage security teams. So even then, they can already do a lot of triage. They can already allow you to scale in a way that you won't be able to if you don't have these individuals in those teams. Because fundamentally, if you have developers or SREs or DevOps, they are building code every day. They're integrating technologies every day. You never will have as much resources as they do, even by an order of magnitude, to review what's going on. Your only chance to scale is to have individuals in those teams who basically act as the voice of security. They kind of bridge that gap between security and DevOps teams. but also they assist on the triage of the security bugs, and they allow that the sort of the focus on a lot of these sort of AppSec activities that you want to be doing, from code reviews, CI pipelines, and I would say these days, I completely, almost like cannot underestimate the value of helping the creation of CI pipelines. And if you have to fund the development of creation of CI pipelines from the security budget, it's one of the best investments that you've done. Because a lot of the things that you want to do, if there isn't a solid CI pipeline, you're going to struggle to put in. And sometimes teams don't have one, don't have the time, don't have the ability, don't have the experience, don't have the understanding, don't have the priority. If you can fund and help the creation of continuous integration pipelines, that makes a massive difference. And then, secure coding practices, standards, thread models. The code dependency these days is sort of called, the software, the whole SBOM stuff, I blank now. Sorry, SCA, software composition analysis and the bill of materials. That is super critical. And then testing, fuzzing, and then dev environments. And now here, the thing about this is, because I was talking to an AppSec audience, I was kind of saying, hey, we need to focus on these things versus that. But actually, a lot of these activities also need to have a security champions in there, because I think that's super critical. Timo, do you want to chip in with your experience on security champions?
I want to ask you a question, because you said a security champion is accountable for security. I thought that is a product owner. So isn't that giving a wrong message when you say a security champion is accountable for security, so everyone else will lean back and say, yeah, we have the security champion?
Yeah, so let me rephrase that a little bit. I think there's a maturity model for security champions, and ultimately the security champion will become accountable. And well, please wait. And I think will become accountable for the security practices and the security activities. The business risk, the business risk would always be owned by the product owner.
Yeah, I totally agree, because beforehand you said it different, but that makes sense for the security practices. Yes, that's there we can agree on. That is a nice sentence. I would put that in my security champions documentation for the role.
So, but you're very spot on. But I also feel that there's an evolution, and you'll see in a bit when I talk about the bar of entry. There's an evolution where you want the security champions, or actually, I recently, one of the concepts I've heard, which I really love, is security ambassadors, which I actually think are a better term, because they are the equivalent of ambassadors in a particular team, the same way the ambassadors in the country represent that country, and you actually create there's a very interesting analogy that we can do here. So what they do, so in a practical element, what are they doing is they basically active participate. For example, in AppSec, Jira or Wiki or GitHub or Azure DevOps or whatever you use, they active participants. One of the very successful practices that I've seen is to have a particular item in the sprint or in the epic that talks about security, to have specific items that need to be considered, and you need somebody who can follow it up. Don't underestimate the power of this. I've seen lots and lots of amazing things happen, because especially in big organizations, you have security champion A talking to security champion B, talking to security champion C in a ways that normally they would not be able to, or it wasn't easy to collaborate. I've seen, you put 20 security champions in a room when we did have these big rooms and big stuff collaborating, and actually you see 3 or 4 staying behind and talking about a particular almost business problem that they have, or a technical problem that they have. And that bridge is very powerful, because also a lot of security is integrated. You can't just do security in one layer. You need to do security in a lot of different layers. And in fact, in these days, I would even say you need, in going actually, Timo, to your point about product, I would argue that you need to have a security champion ambassador in the product team and also on the business team. Because, for example, if there's a lot of decisions that actually the biggest impact on security happens before you even get to the technical team. It's at business level and at strategic level, at product level. That's where a lot of the key security decisions sometimes are made. And it's important that, again, there's a representative there that you do that. So they are the single point of contact for the team. They ensure security, and this is very important. Make sure security is not a blocker on active development. And the whole thing about security is about scaling. So you want to make sure that there's playbooks. You want to make sure that the teams can make decisions by themselves. So the reality is that you want your security champions to make decisions from especially low, moderate security impacts. They are empowered. They capture the information. And you want, from a central security point of view, you don't want to be the bottleneck. You almost want to be consuming the materials. You want to be understanding what they are creating. For example, for threat models, you consume from it. And of course, for the high critical, yes, you might work with some more experts, or you might need their help to drive some decisions, which is also quite important. Another really cool thing is to write QA and testing, especially so work with QA and testing to writing tests, because this is another area that sometimes we miss a lot, is to write good integration, good security tests that will make a big difference. So again, security champions and the ambassadors can actually help with that. And this is the point I was making before, help with development of a continuous integration environment. Now, basically, and this is where it becomes very real sometimes, because you have to negotiate with their basic teams to say, if you have security champions, the expectation is that 20% of their time should be allocated to security activities, because there's no point of having somebody with a title, but no time. And there's things you can do, even from a business and a risk point of view, because you can go to the business and say, hey, that team has a security champion, they allocated the time, they're doing this, that team are not doing it, so they are a much riskier team. Their team basically is not sometimes making the time to implement the security practices, but that in itself, and this is very important, might not be a problem. It all depends what those teams are doing. So it's very important that when you raise the challenge up, you always raise it from the point of view of what is the business context of what you're talking about. It's not because team A has security champions doing security left, right, and center and doing great, a lot of great security activities, and team B that is not doing any of that, that team A is more risky than team B. You can have situations where team B is just doing some prototypes completely outside, innovating. Yes, it would be great to have some security practices, but at the moment they almost focus on proving that something is possible. What you want to make sure is that there's a massive bar of entry from this team to join the other teams. This is where the worldly maps is really powerful, because the maturity that you need on the town planners is very different than maturity that you need on the settlers, and then it's very different than the maturity you need on the pioneers. And this is important from a security point of view. You want to make sure the transitions are good, but you want to make sure you take into account what the teams are doing. Because if you don't talk in their language, they will ignore you for a long time and then turn up when they're ready to go live. So cool. So you can see here the things you do: review code, fix code, write tests, know what's going on, maintain your tickets, basically be involved. And fundamentally, and this is going back to the business case, there's a very direct correlation between these activities and good code and more productivity. And in fact, we were just talking about this earlier. One of the things that happens a lot these days is this idea that agile, you don't need documentation, that agile doesn't need architecture, which is bollocks, right? Completely. It's one of those things where you ask anybody in those teams after a while, wouldn't they like to have up-to-date documentation? Would they like to actually understand how things work behind the scene? How many times they have side effects because they changed something that they didn't fully understand what was going on? And when somebody new comes to those teams, they struggle to understand, the architecture, the code, or somebody has to go to a whiteboard to draw it. Now, I get it that normal development doesn't scale, and in terms of normal architecture practices doesn't scale when you iterating very fast. But we now have solutions, which is when you look at diagram as code, when you look at auto-generated diagrams, when you look at all sorts of capabilities that now allow you to scale. And I know, Timo, you've done a lot of work, for example, with container security. The more you can visualize that, the more you can automate those processes. In a way, you are looking at sometimes a lot of architecture diagrams in a face, if you can visualize, for example, the structures and what you actually are seeing in your containers. So, I think that's something very important. So, and I think, Tim, you've seen some of the other sessions, right? There's some really good, diagramming as code, reading the information, especially graph databases. I think graph databases and graphing this is the key. And of course, once you graph, then you do maps, which is another topic of another session, which is the evolution. Now, this is my pitch to anybody that wants to become a security champion. You will learn a lot. It's a great opportunity for your career. By the way, developers who understand application security are unicorns today. So if you are that, you can already command 20% more of your salary, because there's literally very few out there, and they all have massive premiums. So, take a developer. If that person then spends a bit of time in application security or in security, they became way more valuable. And it's a great progress for their career. Same thing for DevOps, same thing for IT infrastructure, same thing for other parts of the kind of the business world and development world. If you know security and you're good at it, you become a lot more valuable. So what I also like is that I feel that one of my competitive advantages, even in business and in thinking, is that I come from the sort of the offensive side of security. I come from the idea, like in my head, what's possible and what's not possible is very different from other individuals. So, once you've learned how to exploit, how to, I remember these guys were saying, well, we can't connect to that Kubernetes container. We can't do this. We can't do that. I'm like, look, I used to shove traffic over DNS, right? I used to do all sorts of crazy stuff to get in and exploit it. So there's a way. And then, and eventually you start to bring that approach to how you even develop, and you have a much more effective way to build solid architectures, because you have a much more stronger critical mind. So I highly recommend learn about application security, learn about security, which is what security champions get, because you will make you a better developer, will make you a better architect, will really understand how to develop more defensively, because you understand a lot better what can go wrong. And don't get me wrong, writing secure code, creating secure architectures, creating security environments is much, much harder than breaking stuff. But breaking and exploiting is one of those steps that, until you've done it, is all theoretical. And you kind of need to do it. So go to OWASP, download Juice Shop, grab some of the other vulnerable applications. In fact, go for the bug bounties. You might even get some money out of it, right? Exploit things, learn how to hack. That will make you much better. So going back to opportunities, you're going to learn, you're going to improve your development skills, you're going to actually solve some hard challenges, and you're going to make, you're going to make your application more secure, and going to meet members. So, hey, why not join? It's a great thing. There's a lot of great value. So this is my sales pitch to developers to become security champions. Now, here's the thing. So in the beginning, this is very important. If you don't have a security champions network, you have to lower the bar. So the bar is, when you don't have a security champion, there's 3 requirements. You need to be you develop this AppSec, right? So you need to be a developer in a team and squad. You're kind of interested, and you have a heartbeat. I probably say you work for the company. Probably that helps. That's it. In the beginning, the biggest sometimes challenge is even sometimes very good individuals, they worry about the lack of security skills. They worry that they're not going to be good enough, or they create all these problems to do it. So for a while I did this trick where if I found a team that didn't have a security champion, I will give them a mug, and I'm saying, hey, this is your security champion, because you don't have one. So hey, if you want to talk about security, talk to the mug, right? Because this mug is what you've got, right? Because you don't have somebody here. And it worked quite well, because then they would give the mug to the person appointed security champion, and that became quite cool. Because the key thing is that if you just have somebody assigned to security, is already a massive step forward. Now, what I want to say here is that this is not the end game. So you start by lowering the bar, getting your network, and you need to put a lot of energy on it. But once you have that, then you need to start raising the stakes. You need to start having more responsibilities. And this, Timo, going back to the idea of making them accountable, there's a moment where the security champion activities have to be part of the reward structure, the performance reviews, and if you have bonus, the bonus allocation. Because if somebody's being rewarded and if their performance at the end of the quarter or the end of 6 months or the end of the year is justified by A, B, C, or D, if one of those is not security, then there's only so much that person is going to do. Because there's a moment where, you can even have the worst case scenario where somebody does a great job for the company, really makes a massive difference, but get a bad review, don't get a bonus, or doesn't get promoted, or doesn't have a good review at the end of the year because they didn't meet some of the objectives that they didn't have the time to do because they were doing security activities. So the evolution here is that the more serious and the more basically mature activities you have in your security program, the more accountable, the more you want to make sure there's a response on the other side, but the more you want to reward those individuals. And I think that's very important. And then the other final element is who pays for this. So there's there's 3 ways the security champion can be paid, or the ambassadors. They can be paid by a person that already exists, and you basically take some of their time, and you basically in a way your security budget just got another 10% of that person's salary, because that's the time that is now being involved. You have the security team can fund security champions that are given to the teams allocated to them. So you fund it centrally and you go, hey, I got a security champion for you, and here's 4 squads. He's a security champion for the 4 squads. And you could also have the security champions be funded directly by those squads, where it's actually one of the headcounts that they pay for. So I think, and you can see the evolution of this. And each of those has bring more responsibilities, but it's very important that you tackle that on. Now, one more question on when you're hiring. Is much better to hire. In fact, I would say that as a requirement, when you're hiring security champions for the teams, you want to hire them for that team, regardless if they're going to be a security champion. And this is very important. So instead of hiring, for example, AppSec experts or security experts or cybersecurity experts or whatever, and then you allocate them to the team, is a lot more efficient to hire a React developer, or a Node developer, or a Java developer, or a DevOps, or an SRE engineer that would be good enough to be hired on that team. But then all you do is you say, hey, I'm going to hire this resource, I'm going to put on that team, and I'm kind of going to take first dibs for the first year because I want them to be doing the stuff for security. And then the idea will be that eventually that person will join that team as a full-time engineer or developer, etc., because it's also very liked and it's part of the team and he adds a lot of value to them. So this is very important. It's always better to hire somebody who understands the development stack and is a developer than to hire a security expert. It's much easier to take, and this is coming from security, but it's much easier to take a very good developer, a good professional, and make them a really good security professional than to take a very good security, basically person and make them a good developer or make them understand development at native level. Unless, of course, that security person is already a developer, but that's not the point. So it's much better to hire resources in context. And this is even more critical when you go outside the normal traditional security. So if you want to put somebody on a financial team, don't hire an engineer, hire a finance person, and then give them security responsibilities. You want to hire somebody for the HR team, hire an HR person and put them there. If you want to hire somebody for a production line, if you want to hire somebody for a factory, want somebody for the cloud team, don't hire a security that understands Azure and put them on an AWS team, right? Okay, sometimes you can jump, but it's much better. Put this way, that's probably easier than having somebody who never used the cloud and then put them over there. So it's much better to hire developers, to hire a resource that in a way that you have to fight to keep on your team, because the team will want to steal it because they have lots of work they can give that developer. And by the way, there's nothing wrong with that as long as you keep hiring more. I have no problems with my resources being stolen by other teams because As long as, of course, it's all done nicely, you just created the best security champion and ambassador to go to another team. Pooja, please join in.
I just wanted to say one thing from my experience, that in the current world of agile working and getting products out the door within tight deadlines, it's kind of hard to convince product managers and business stakeholders to really focus on security related development practices and tasks as part of their day-to-day development practices. So due to the lack of support from managers and higher authorities, tech champs, or let me say developers, are less willing to participate in security champion related activities. So this is a major challenge that I have been facing, like in my organization, getting them really motivated to be more participating in such kind of activities.
Yeah. So I think there's two things there. To start a security champions network, you need to be an energizer bunny. It doesn't just happen. You need to basically continuously create materials, poke people, nudge them, keep throwing them to the middle, because of course the best meeting is when they present. But I failed here. I've done situations where when I was actively engaged and I could see the work I was doing, the security champions meeting was super healthy. They added a lot of value. Everybody were really enjoying it. We're very successful, to the point where in the beginning I used to present a lot, and then I presented less and less and less, and then it was just them presenting to each other. But the moment that I stopped putting energy on it, it collapsed. And in some ways in the beginning I was thinking, well, what am I doing wrong? But then I realized that it takes time to build a culture, and you have to expect that for a while you need to keep putting energy onto it. You need to make sure that it has a momentum. But the more, for example, you can share why it matters, the more you make it relatable to them, the more they get engaged. So to have a team, for example, present an exploit that just happened to them, or even show how they fix a particular issue, that makes a big difference. But you need to keep putting energy. But I'm assuming now that you got a nice mandate, because if you don't have a mandate, it doesn't matter. Even if they want to be involved, right? If they don't have the time or the mandate, then forget about it.
That's helpful. Thanks.
But you need to put energy, and you need to keep coming up with things. And to be honest, I would say it's easier than it was 7-10 years ago, because now, things are way more real than they were 7 years ago, 10 years ago. Now, you should be able to make much stronger business case. You should have incidents. You should have examples. You should have exploits. You should have vulnerabilities that you have that you can show the case. Now, on the second part of this is, if you don't have support from business, you need to elevate that. You need to make those teams accountable. And this is going to Timo's point. The product owner needs to be accountable for the fact that he or she is not creating time for their team to the security activities. And you need to make sure that they propagate up. So you need to, one of the best comments today in the CISO roundtable, which again, I highly recommend you take a look at it, and said, what always works is success stories. And I really love that. And I don't think I do this enough. I think it's a great concept, and you want to keep rewarding what works, and you want to keep exposing the teams that really work, and then by proxy, expose the teams where it's not working. And as long as you try to make it work, you need to take an emotional view to say, look, it's not me because he works over there. He works over here, but on these 5 teams or these 10 teams or these X teams, it's not working. So you need to make them accountable for the fact that it's not working. Does that help?
That makes sense. Yeah, that definitely does. Thank you.
Cool. Timo, any further comments that you want to chip in?
I have a client currently which wants to have security champions, but doesn't want to invest 20% of the time of their people. I'm still trying to figure out how to convince the C-level that a good idea to spend 20% of the time of security champions.
But here's my
So
question.
they say they are so small, so
Yeah.
that it's not needed to that security champion do more than just motivate others to do security, because when there are security tasks, they will solve it different. Yeah.
But, okay, but you should be able to. So my strategy when there's a team that says I can do it, kind of feels a bit like that. Hey, we do it already. We good. I never forget this story of this guy who said that he found this team in Microsoft who told him, we don't need any of that security stuff. And he was like, but you are one of these core teams. What you mean you don't need this? But then what he told them was to say, look, everything you talk about, we do already, but we don't do it for security. What do you mean we don't authenticate endpoints? What do you mean we don't have a good pipeline? What do you mean we don't do threat models or architecture diagrams? What do you mean we don't validate inputs? What do you mean we don't manage our dependencies? So every one of those things that we want to do in security, I mean, we don't manage our risk or have governance. They do it all, but that's because that team was probably one of the best teams, because actually it was one of the key components. Now, sometimes you have that. And what I would say is that if you have a team that says, I can do it all, then raise the bar. Said, great, that means you're going to be doing this, right? So I can make you accountable for having all these practices because you already, you say that you can do security. So what happens between the spectrum of this team that will be able to walk the walk and the team who's not doing anything and everything in the middle is that eventually you're going to have incidents. Eventually you're going to have evidence. You're going to be able to say, hey, look, you guys didn't want security, but I did a security assessment, I did security review, or we had this incident, or this just happened. And clearly you're not doing these practices. So suddenly but you need to also make them accountable, because that's what they're saying to you, right? They're saying, we don't want to do security champions because we don't see the value. So you have to basically say, fine, but you better be delivering this. And then you wait for them to fail. But this is important. You're playing a mid-time game, right? And you know that, look, it's two ways. Either they don't fail, and it's great because you have a great security and you don't worry about it, really, really cool. Or they're not going to be able to deliver on the security activities. And then you need to say, look, but you're choosing to be insecure. You're making the business insecure. We're trying to help. You're not letting us help. And you're now putting the business at risk because of this. But you have to be fact-driven, or else it's just your opinion versus their opinion.
Okay.
Make them walk the walk. But the other thing, you have to be careful if you're asking the right question, because if you go to the business and you say, can you give me 20% of those engineers? The business will hear, you're going to slow me down. You're going to basically prevent me from hitting that objective, because that team says, I'm going to deliver this. And you go, hey, can you reduce the output? But the other question you want to ask is, can you fund security champions for that team? That's a different question. And a lot of business will say, okay, that I can do. So if you say, look, you cannot give me 20% time from that individual, can I hire one for 5 teams so I can give that team 20%? And then the question is, okay, so you don't want to invest X thousands of pounds in security, because you cannot have both ways.
Yeah. Okay.
So look, the key here I always think about is make sure that you can have fact-based conversations. Make sure that you can reduce this to risk calculations. And I always view this like, think like a hacker, right? Think about, where is the pinch point? Where is the vulnerability? Where's the gap? Where's the sweet spot? And the sweet spot is somebody saying, I don't see the value of security, or I don't think we have a problem, or I don't see the threat, or I don't want to invest, or that team is super busy that I don't want to put money on it. So find the sweet spot and then find the solution for that sweet spot. And there's a moment where you have to say, fine, then you guys accept the risk, right? And then if something happens, then you're accountable. So I use the analogy of rolling the dice to say, hey, you guys been rolling the dice for the last year. You want to keep rolling the dice for the next 3 years or 6 months? That's your decision. Timo, your job is to make sure that it's very explicit that those executives are rolling the dice.
That is actually very effective. That is the way I get teams to resolve their vulnerabilities now, that you are accepting the business risk and you're going to be held accountable if anything goes south. So, yeah.
But make sure it's their boss and their boss's boss and the boss's boss who held accountable. Because the problem sometimes is that the boss directly or the project manager directly, she will gladly take every single risk unless it's on fire, because that person is being held accountable for delivering a project. So they, and it's not that they will maliciously do it, but they will not proactively do security unless you can really prove. So they raise the bar of what you do very high. So you want to make sure that you have a very clear mapping that when you give the risk, and you're absolutely right, Pooja, that you have to give the risk to the business, the business owner or the project manager, but make sure that it propagates up. Because what you might find is that the project manager or the business owner of a particular product is more than happy to buy that risk because he knows that in 6 months from now, he's not going to be there. But his boss and his boss's boss might take a very different view. And the higher, so Tim, the interesting part here is if you can correlate those lack of security activities to, for example, even business value. In fact, even valuation these days. I had conversations with boards where I say, look, the part of the reason we do these activities, because if you want to do a sale in the future, or if you want to be, if somebody's going to do due diligence, these activities would actually add value to the business. But on the other hand, if you're in a company that's fighting for survival, the startup mode, they might not be in business in 6 months from now. If they can't figure something to do, then, sometimes it's a much harder kind of proposition to let them do the right thing. Cool, right? So final, training, and the best training, of course, is done on the language, and they do use vulnerable by design applications and write exploits. So in fact, Pooja, the best things to do in the beginning is actually hackathons, is writing exploits, even if it's on somebody else's application. Pick the OWASP vulnerable web app, Juice Shop, pick something, do some hackathons, show some exploits, but make sure, of course, they're relevant to your world, but nothing like a couple of good exploits to really get everybody a lot more focused. And of course, the best exploit is one in your own product, right? Because that really makes everybody focus because they understand the side effects of that. And cool. I think that's the content. Let me just see any kind of further questions. I don't know, Pooja, team, or anybody else, any further questions or comments? If not, go ahead.
Yeah, please, Tim, go on.
I'm still thinking about the name of security champion and how is it?
Ambassadors.
Yeah, exactly. So when I think ambassadors is a better name. I agree, but when I have security champions already, if it's a good idea to change the name because I think it sounds better. I see some problems in changing the names when it's already established.
I think you can evolve to it. I think you can have a mode where your security champions are more of somebody, the beginning of it. So you become a security champion, then you evolve into a security ambassador. So I would do it like that, because your security champions, as you mature your process, as you gain them more responsibility. So for example, a security champion might be one of these sort of people that help a bit on more ad hoc and as they can, whereas security ambassador is the one that it's already part of their job spec, is already part of their bonus structure, is already part of their performance reviews. So it's a lot more formal, and also you can formalize it a lot more. So that's one option, right? So yeah, I wouldn't just change everything overnight, but if you already have a security champions program, because also like eventually there's security champions and security champions, right? There's, you do have different levels. So this is one way to represent those two.
Okay, yeah. The trainee might not be ambassador. Yeah.
Exactly. Cool. Pujit, I think you were going to ask a question or make a comment.
Yeah, I was just thinking about one of the challenges that we face. We have a security champions program, and there are around 45 security champions in that, and we have had we have fortnightly catch-ups with them, in which we most of the time we try to train them on best practices on using DevSecOps tooling, or we are starting a new concept of around educating them on the owasp top 10, wherein we'll show little exploits and such. But what we really fail on is like getting them excited and engaged in the sessions, like some comments, feedback, some thoughts. We have to really struggle with like getting them talking during the sessions. And yeah, this is one thing, like you said, that at the start is more of how we engage with them, just putting more focus on our interactions with them, and slowly it will be like them interacting more and us doing less, but it doesn't seem like that way.
Who in your world, who presents? Is it you or them?
Is it me? It's me.
So the trick is, and this is the trick, right? Throughout those 2 weeks, every time you see something interesting, can you present that? Literally. And even you create the slides for them. But the trick to engagement is get them to present and lower the bar. It could be something simple. It could be something they discovered. It could be something that you discovered. But find somebody in the team and get them to present. And that's literally the trick. Half your, every time you have an interaction, in the back of your head, you're always thinking, can I get that person to present? And you need to kind of nominate them, especially in the beginning. So and you'll find that eventually they take very proud of it. So it's a good news if they go, okay, not next week, but I present on the next one. That's already good. And but the trick is to get them to present the stuff. Even if in the beginning you end up creating half the slides and you just nudge them, but that creates good energy. So that would be my recommendation.
I'll try that. I'll try that in the next 6 jam sessions. So let's see.
Cool. Brilliant. So thanks for participating. I hope this added some value, and the recording will be available, and I'll see you next time. Oh wait, there's a question here. Wait, one more. Let's do this from Sweeta. What are the continuous activities that security department should invest in order to foster the security champions community? I think, Sweeta, I would say that the continuous activities make sure that you have security champions events. Make sure that you meet regularly. Make sure that, for example, training sessions, hackathons, pizza nights, pizza days, virtual sessions like this, collaborative threat models. That's another great way. And also keep inviting them to your sessions. A lot of those things are really good practices that you do, that you keep putting energy for your security champions, because the more you do it, the more it becomes natural. And also allow others to join in. Never say no to anybody that wants to be involved. So if a security champion wants to bring a colleague or somebody in, let them, because they might be your next security champions. So I would say in this beginning is always be recruiting for security champions and always making up literally, and I'm telling this picture, make up stuff, right, for them to present. And the more they present, the better you get that momentum. All right, everybody have a rest of a great day. And the next session is good old Jim Manico with Hyperdrive. So I see you next. And by the way, there's amazing session on the summit. So please be involved and present at the next one. So actually, finally, Pooja, you should be presenting. You have a network of 35 security champions. Please present at the next summit and take it from there.
Thanks, Dinis. This was great. Thanks, everyone. Bye.